Hi, this is Dave. So here's the question of the day. Is God waiting for you to lead? Is God waiting for you to lead? You know, I recently came across this statement, which I'm going to read to you here in just a second, which should shake the foundations of your life and your career. I mean, this is one of the most sobering statements I may have ever read. Quote, based on a study conducted by Arizona Christian University during 2020 to 2023, born-again Christians deeply committed to practicing their faith fell from 88% to 46%. Worse yet, this study discovered that only 6% of professed Christians have a biblical worldview. Instead, most have a smorgasbord view of their faith, picking and choosing what they believe. Man, the trend is obvious. You know, here's another study that found very similar results. This is from a Pew Research Center in a 2020 survey by the Pew Research Center. 65% of adults in the United States identified themselves as Christians. 65%. So here's what we have. Number one, we have fewer people identifying themselves as Christians than ever. That's number one. Number two, of those who identify as Christians, it used to be that 88% were deeply committed to practicing their faith, and that 88% has fallen to 46%. So we have fewer Christians. We have fewer Christians committed to practicing their faith, and of those, only 6% have a biblical worldview. So put this together. There are fewer self-proclaimed Christians today than at any time in the country's history. Of those, the subset of Christians who are deeply committed has fallen in half. Of those self-proclaimed Christians, only 6% have a biblical worldview. So there are fewer Christians. Most don't know exactly what they believe, and fewer are really committed. Truly, we are down to a remnant. What an incredibly sad state of affairs. Satan must be proud of himself. It's like an NBA championship game and your team is leading by 50 points at halftime. You know, you can start to celebrate even though the game is only partially over. I believe that must be how Satan is feeling. And you know, I think there are multiple reasons for this sorry state. There's enough blame to spread all around our culture, including things like this. You know, number one, the entertainment industry that continues to portray Christians as either hypocrites or buffoons. Just watch any TV show. You know, if there's some identification of a Christian, they're either portrayed as hypocrites or second-class buffoons. So that's number one. Number two, political environment. Both parties have sacrificed spiritual positions for political advantage. What a shame. And of course, an educational system that champions perverse concepts at the expense of moral values that have served mankind for centuries. The teachers evidently today know better than those generations that have preceded them. And here's another one, an institutional church system which has failed in its core mission, and that is to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, and the one who does not believe will be condemned. That's the mission, and the institutional church system has failed. It has presided over the destruction of Christianity in this country. And then, of course, we have ourselves. I mean, several generations of business and professional people who have traded more principled positions for the pursuit of comfortable lifestyles. I'm sure we can list contributing factors like this for pages. My concern is for only one. And in this podcast, I'm just concerned about one contributing factor, and that is the lack of Christian leadership. There are so few leaders, it's no wonder that the people have lost their way. Leadership in today's world does not mean pastors sermonizing in large services. That model has failed, and is dramatically losing adherents. We don't need more pastors, more worship leaders, more youth ministers, more churches, etc. That's a failed model. That model is what has led us to where we are today. Leadership today is defined as someone influencing someone else by the actions they take. Leadership is ordinary Christians who, in thousands of small actions, manifest the message that God is alive and lovingly active in the lives of his people. Leadership today is far more about what one does than what one says. Leadership is something every Christian can demonstrate. One visit to a sick neighbor can say more about Christianity than any episode of The Connors or Young Sheldon. One gift of money made directly to an individual in need sends a positive signal of God's involvement in the lives of his people. One offer to pray for a grieving acquaintance says more about Christianity than the media portrayal of Christians as buffoons and hypocrites. One unexpected act of kindness in God's name says more about real Christianity than the pronouncements of the local pastor. And it's time for Christians to step up and realize that the institutions that they have relied on to nurture Christianity and make disciples have failed. It's time to take the Bible at its word and begin to act like we believe it. It's time for each of us to step up, to stop thinking that the quote-unquote church is going to fix things. It has failed. It's time for us to step in. It's time to take the Bible at its word and begin to act like we believe it. Now, everyone listening to this, every single person listening to this can, in the next 24 to 48 hours, create and implement some small act of leadership. Just some individual action that will impact someone with the grace of God and begin to turn the tide. It's time to act. It's time to lead. We cannot put it off any longer. We're a remnant, up against an overwhelming tidal wave of anti-Christianity. It's up to you and I now, the remnant, to step up and take some action. Okay? That's it. We're done. Bye-bye.